Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello and welcome to the Earthworks Podcast. I'm Kevin Hicks, your host today. I am the Western Regional Agronomist for the company, and I'm happy to have on board today Mr. Nathan Cox of Desert Green Turf. Nathan's company serves the Pacific Northwest with some really interesting products, not only turf sod, but some other offerings in the sports turf world that we're going to talk about in depth. He's a real outside of the box kind of guy, and we're excited to have him on today. And thanks again for listening. Enjoy. I'd like to welcome Nathan Cox. This will be a little bit different talk than what we've had in the past, but Nathan is a good friend of mine, and we'll get into some details. But he's a sod grower extraordinaire and conventional farmer and other things, and dad of 4 kids. And Nathan, I'd like to welcome you today, but thanks so much for taking some time. You're at a basketball tournament in Boise right now, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I appreciate you inviting me on, Kevin.
Yeah, this will be fun. So I gave you a little bit of an outline, and I'm going to try to do the best I can to stick to it. So what we usually start with is who the heck you are, what you do for a living, and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
My name, as you just said, is Nathan Cox, and
Yep.
I grew up in a small farming family community just south of Moses Lake in a small town called Warden, Washington, and been involved with farming pretty much my whole life. So I started working at a young age and got into being kind of an irrigation troubleshooting guru, and then started farming at about 21, 22, doing some custom farming for some outfits, and kind of went on from there.
So you guys lease some land, you own some land. How many acres of what we'd call conventional ag are you responsible for?
We're with the sod and row crops and everything, we're at about 2,700 acres.
Okay.
That we're responsible for right now. We've kind of declined that number the last few years, just because the turf deal's taken up a lot more of our time than what we imagined originally, So.
And you've kind of separated duties. Your brother Curtis does a lot of the row crop stuff, and you stick to the sod side of the business, right?
Yeah, I mean,
for the most part.
Yep. I mean, we bounce stuff off each other, and we kind of keep an eye on each other's stuff. But for the most part, he handles all the row crops and forage crops, and I handle the turf deal.
So of the 2,700, how many acres roughly are you in sod?
Right now we are at 640 acres that is dedicated to turf. And it's the weird time we're in right now. We were in the mood to do some growth there, and we've kind of backed off on that to kind of see where everything ends up here. Yeah,
and I think that's smart, right? We got to kind of walk before we run right now, because nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring.
Oh man, yeah, it's a different world than I ever thought I'd see in my life out there right now, for sure. So
yeah. So what markets aren't slowing down for you right now? I would assume housing's probably still clicking along pretty good.
Yeah, the housing market saved our butt on inventory this year, because the sports turf, the golf market really slowed down. A lot of customers canceled jobs. So we kind of just turned our focus towards the homeowner market, just to kind of be able to keep everybody working. And that thing exploded way higher than I could have ever imagined it doing, which was good. We weren't having to lay anybody off, and we're able to keep everybody going. And now we're starting to see that, the golf course market's starting to come back a little bit. We're starting to see we got some sports turf stuff starting to roll on here. So I think we'll be okay this year. Next year, I don't know yet on next year. So.
Well, if you can tell me what's going to happen next week, you're way ahead of me right now.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. I want to get into that breakdown a little bit more in detail, but I want to back up for a minute, Nathan, and talk, because I think people think about the Pacific Northwest, and if you haven't been to this part of the country, I think people would be very, very surprised as to the climate in Moses Lake and why you've been successful where you are and being able to turn a sod crop pretty quickly. Talk about things like precipitation, temperature. Like right now, I know you're probably over 100 degrees, and precipitation, humidity, that kind of thing, and where you get your water too.
Okay. Yeah. So Moses Lake, where we're at, our average annual rainfall is 7.69 inches a year. So we have customers about 3 hours away that see that in a week.
Right.
So it's kind of unique because everybody says, "Oh, you're from Washington, Evergreen State." Well, we're sagebrush and dry. The Columbia Basin, when they put the Grand Coulee Dam in the 1950s, that kind of opened up that area around us and provided a irrigation project and to one of the most fertile pieces of big chunks of ground in the world, and with it being a dry climate, to be able to control your moisture in it, it really gives you a benefit for growing competitive yields and against, I'm a third generation potato farmer, don't farm anymore, but, it's always kind of funny. You talk to guys in Idaho and they're like, "Oh man, we really had a bumper crop on potatoes this year. We hit 23 ton, and I'm like, oof, we don't hit 35. We're in trouble, and they're like, yeah, right. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of all relevant to your growing conditions, your hours, frost-free days that you have, length of the growing condition and everything like that. We're at low elevation, we're at 1,200 feet elevation, and we get a lot of sunlight, and we have access to readily available water. So all of our water where we grow the sod and a majority of our row crops is all wells, which is pretty unique for our area. Most everything comes out of from the irrigation district. But we're on a later developed farm that was some sand dunes. And so we have about 22 wells that are punched in out there and tied together. And so we pump all of our water on the main farm that we farm there.
And you mentioned sand dunes, and I've been out to your property several times. That's another thing I just don't think people get their head around. When you did that extra, that new pivot last year, and you leveled all that land. I mean, there were literally sand dunes out there, and you've got a pretty fine sand that's on average how deep?
So like I would say the average dunes veins that run through there, they'll run every 200 to 300 yards. You'll have a vein of sand dunes, that's constantly moving. Well, when we started knocking them down, we'd bring them down anywhere from 12 feet at the high spots to 25, 35 feet in the high spots, and then you're basically taking those down and filling up the low spots. And we don't make it flat, but we make it farmable, which probably gives you an average of about 15 feet across, if you take an average there, some of the spots there, you might have that are only 5 feet deep, but, and there's probably spots that are out there that are 30 feet deep, but I'd say on the, average, probably around 15 foot of sand on top of it.
So your investment in drainage materials is pretty minimum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just such a very unique part of the world. And like I said, I think people outside of the Pacific Northwest just don't understand how unique and how much of a desert it is. And it's a big advantage, especially when you've got plentiful water coming out of the Columbia Basin. And I tell people, if you drive up from your place to the Wenatchee Valley, and if you've ever eaten an apple, it more than likely came out of that area of the country. And it's just incredibly fertile ground with a lot of diversity in agriculture.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like I mentioned, you're in the Boise Valley right now, chasing your oldest daughter around at a high school basketball tournament. Your twins are the same age as my youngest. They'll be freshmen this year. A lot of discussion, and especially in the sports turf and golf world, of work-life balance. And I know how hard you drive as far as work goes. How do you balance things? I've asked you this before, and you kind of shrug your shoulders and say you just do what you got to do. But I think it's a really important subject, and growing up in farming, you're definitely in a different boat where you're just used to working hard, but now you've got 4 really active kids, and you're chasing them around, and you seem to do a whole lot better job at it than I do, and you've got an extra one to chase around. So what's your secret?
To be honest with you, when I kind of got more into the sports turf and got off the balers, and I used to be growing turf, hopping on a baler 8:00 at night, bail until midnight, and you couldn't go to that basketball tournament because we had hay down, or we were in the middle of wheat harvest, and now that we've kind of done that separation, my poor brother, he can't, he's busy every weekend because the crops aren't waiting for there, where we schedule a lot of our stuff. We try to do Monday through Friday. A lot of our stuff's out of town, so I am gone a lot. Most of, I would say, our average distance for jobs is over 3 hours away, maybe even more than that. So we are gone a lot there, but on Fridays, I'm typically home Friday night, and I'll go with the son to the baseball tournament, and wife go with the daughter here, or vice versa. My wife's in Moscow, Idaho, with my son going in 7th grade this weekend, and I'm in Boise. So that's actually kind of a little bit better for me. The other thing is you just there's times where you just can't make it. You got to flip over at Cheney Stadium, and they're counting on you to have that field ready for soccer, and you just got to say, hey, Grandma, I need help here. And we're fortunate enough, both sets of grandparents live within 45 minutes of us, so we get a lot of help from family when that stuff comes. But for the most part, I try to get there. I used to be a little more wrapped up in work, where I thought I had to work 7 days a week, or I was not working hard, and that's kind of changed here about 4 years ago, and took that change and said, you know what, I need to be there for these kids and support them, and that's way more important than trying to make a dollar. So I made that a priority, and it's probably the best decision I ever made.
Well, and you made the decision to bring your farm manager Martine on, and I know he's been a tremendous help for you, and he's a good man, and
oh yeah,
that definitely helped.
Yeah, he's that was probably the smartest thing we ever did, and it's not just Martine, it's Martine's crew, and the guys, Poncho's been there for 14 years. I don't think he's ever missed a day of work. I don't think he's ever been late in 14 years. I'm like, I sit there and tell people that, and they're like, oh, he's had to have been sick one day. I'm like, no, he's never missed a day of work. And they're like, in 14 years? I'm like, yeah, he's never been late. And people are just blown away by that. They're like, well, what's he doing? He's sick. I'm like, I don't think he gets sick. I don't know. He just is he's always there. And we got Tyson over on the, out of Enumclaw over on the west side of the state. That, he was a great addition. I mean, he's from the industry, been an assistant at some of the super high end clubs, knew all the guys in the golf industry. And he's really helping me out there too, because I don't have to be in Seattle every day. He can run up there because it's closer for him. So we have Shad, who's come on here recently, and Rain, and Shad has a pilot's license. We have a couple little single engine planes, and that makes the world a lot smaller. You can fly to Boise in an hour and a half, and you're not wasting 6.5 hour drives. So that has really been able to get the key to getting our people home on weekends to see their wives, see their kids, and I don't think you can keep quality people around if they don't get home and see the family. So we kind of started making those investments, and that was a big help for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. We were talking, Nathan and I sat down for lunch this week when he brought a couple of clients over to look at some bent grass, and you flew over, and you were talking about the justification of that and the time, and it all makes sense. And you think about owning an airplane, whether it's a little 4 or 6 seater or a Gulfstream, and you think, oh, that's an extravagance. But when you put it in that perspective, it kind of fits your program, and it makes a lot of sense where you can move people around in a lot more efficient manner. And honestly, if you've got somebody that can fly the plane, it's not much more of an investment than a nice pickup. So
Yeah, I mean, our 182. I promise you, I could probably get more out of my pickup than I could for that. So, yeah, everybody's like, "Oh, you got two airplanes." I'm like, well, yeah, but we use them. I mean, they're tools for work. I don't use them personally. I use them to get back for personal reasons, But we got a job in Hamilton, Montana, and we're driving down on Monday. Well, Monday's shot. Now you work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you drive home on Friday. Now Friday's shot. So you just got three work days in a week where we could be down there in an hour and a half on Monday morning and fly out at 5 o'clock on Friday night. Now all of a sudden you just got a 5-day work week. So it's a big difference. Time matters in our industry, and that's one thing we've made the investment into the equipment and the right stuff to make stuff so we can get it done in a timely manner. So if you got to renovate, if you're doing something on your golf course or something like that, and you're waiting for greens and it takes us 2 months to do your greens, you're probably not going to be pretty popular with your club. So
that's right.
We can speed that process up to a 5-7 day deal. All of a sudden you look better, and we can go on to the next job and do another job now. So.
Yeah, it's that specialization that I think has really separated you from some of the competition. We will get into that, I promise. But I also promised Nathan that we'd get him out of here in 30 to 45 minutes. So we got a lot of ground to cover. So I don't know this story, Nathan, but you grew up farming. You grew up growing spuds and corn and things like that. How did you originally get started with this whole sod venture?
So that is actually kind of a crazy story. I got into growing mint for a big mint oil company, where they were kind of guaranteeing the bank loans, and I was kind of the front of it, and custom growing mint, which allowed me to rent ground and tie ground up, and in that, the agronomist I was working with at the time, we became really good friends because we were trying to dial this peppermint stuff in and get the best oil and quality of oil we could get. So you start working with a guy, you become friends, and he really was passionate about grass seed. And so he's like, "Hey, let's grow some Merrick bluegrass seed, And so we went out, rented a circle grass seed, and bought an old swather and started doing grass seed. And that did that for quite a few years there, and started growing some native stuff, reclamation stuff, and kind of was learning a whole new deal for me on grass. So I liked the grass business, and the crazy thing was the geese liked the grass business. So we're sitting in a pit one day shooting geese out of a grass seed field of mine. And my buddy goes, "You know what you need to grow out here is some sod, and then we could just cut the sod and put it over top of our pit lids, and the geese won't see us, and that'd be really cool." And it just kind of planted a seed in my mind. And
I had not heard that.
We are about 6 beers into it, and I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to plant some so we can just sod all of our lids. And so I started doing the research on it, and about 4 months later, we planted our first field. And shortly after that, met you and started picking your brain on everything I could, and started meeting other customers of mine and picking their brains and trying to figure out what guys wanted in the industry, and just kept trying to make it a better product and get better equipment, and just kind of went from there.
That's amazing. So all the great ideas start over beers, right? I mean, it's definitely the best jumping off point. So
yeah, and it really works good between 6 and 7. Anything before or after that is not very cost effective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what varieties and cultivars are you growing right now?
So our rye blends, right now we basically have about 3 different rye blends. When we kind of break it out to our dark rye blends and our light rye blends. For our sports turf, we're looking for shear strength, wear tolerance, fast rooting, stuff that's ready to be played on tomorrow. And color and appearance, but safety's first and foremost for that. For golf, we have customers out there that are wanting lighter green, those European lime, I call them, I mean, they look great as long as you don't have dark green sitting right next to them, So we try to hit both of those. We have 2 different light ryes. We run an RPR blend for one of them. And then we run what we call our Broadmoor blend, which is just basically the limest green rye we could find in a test plot down in Oregon. And we planted them and liked it. So those lighter ones are going to match up with POA a little bit better. And then our dark greens are going to match up with, the sports fields that want that wow factor and this and that. And we kind of rely on our customers to come up with those varieties with us, think of it more as a partnership versus, well, I picked out these varieties. They're the best ones out there. We kind of want to grow what people want. So those are our rye. Fiesta 4 and Fiesta 5 are kind of my favorite too. They just really germinate quick. If you're doing overseeding, they hold the color, through the heat for me. And I'm getting really high shear strengths with them with some bluegrasses in them too. And then on our blues, we kind of have the same thing. We have our lighter blues that we put with our lighter rye, and our darker blues go with our darker rye. And then we have our 100% blues, which right now, we've got HD 2.0, we've got 365 SS, we've grown some HGT, we have a blend of dwarf bluegrasses from Jacqueline, that's kind of that North Idaho bluegrass, matches up with them. A lot of the courses, are those varieties. And that's kind of what, so we've got and we're always trying new stuff, the hot new one, we're trying to be ahead of it and get it and see if we like it, or is it, just got over marketed, we grow some CSI, some glyc tolerant rye, and then our, fescues, we grow Scottish Lynx. Fescue, we grow Bandon Dunes mix, or Bandon Dunes 3 mix, more of those native type areas, or, they just want a different look, contour around rough or something like that. And then we have our RTF, which is our tall fescues. And I was kind of, at first, I started growing tall fescue, I think about 5 years ago. And, of course, drought tolerant and all this. And yeah, they're the best thing ever. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I've heard this before, And I mean, they're not the prettiest grass in the world. They're not, every grass has its pros and every grass has its cons, but I've been really impressed with the tall fescue. I mean, it's, just a native area, or whether it's a rough on a golf course, and mainly just because of the inputs we put into it. We don't mow it very often. We don't have to, we get it established, kind of push it hard fertility wise, and then we kind of back it off. And we probably mow it 70% less than we do our blues and our rye. So we've had some pretty good success. It's not the perfect grass. I mean, there's times where you'll get rust in it and you're way too lean on fertilizer and you can't get it to grow out of it very fast, and you're like, oh, right. And you learn those as you go, but the tall fescue has been a real eye opener for me. And I think that's the one that's going to surprise me the most, Kevin, in our homeowner, vacation home type places. I think you're going to start seeing guys in roughs going to it, because you can make it look good. And, if you can cut back your mowing 50%, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, we've had some good discussions about that. And most of that business, I know you told me, came out of architects who were speccing it either for commercial or residential development. But it was less about water savings than it is about the other inputs from mowing and fertility and that standpoint. Now, granted, you only see it for a short period of its total life, but it's interesting how some of these things kind of evolve as you get through them. So on the bent grass side, you've got a couple different varieties, right? And how many acres of bent are you growing?
So we're about 10 acres. We were getting ready to expand that because we've sold out every year the last 3 years and last probably 4 or 5 years. And we just developed a new 25-acre circle. We were going to put 25 acres in bent. And this winter, thankfully for you guys, not so much for us, but we didn't have any winter damage in bent. And so we didn't have a whole lot of demand for it. So we're kind of putting that on the table right now. And we'll circle back around once we move. But our bent sales are probably down by about 85% from normal this year. So as far as varieties go, T1, we've always carried T1. We've always had a pretty good stock amount of that. Pure Distinction's one that we've just been growing the last probably 3 or 4 years. And that's, excuse me, that's been actually probably my new favorite one. It's a lighter colored one. Just watching it in the last few years, it's really impressed me.
Yeah.
We've got McKinsey right now. We're kind of watching it. It's looking good. It's kind of a new one too. And, it's hard to tell till you hear the customers' reports that year 2, 3 down the road, how to come out of winter, had a bad ice year, how to handle that, that kind of stuff to make an honest opinion on it. But so those are the 3 we actually have in stock right now. We've grown Alpha, we've grown some PLS, we've grown some other stuff. Every once in a while somebody wants something custom grown, and I want to see the characteristics of it, so we'll plan it for a small custom project or something. But
and you mentioned too a vast majority of your business, I think, is on the west side of the Cascade Range, which is the Portland, Seattle areas, and invariably they're going to be growing Poa annua at some point, at least on the golf course side of the business. And so looking for those lighter varieties like the Rise you mentioned, or the Pure Distinction in the bent grasses is something that those turf managers are really in key with. And the dark green ones tend to just telegraph the invasion of Poa as time goes on. So it's interesting how you've listened to your customers. It's a very novel idea to actually listen to your customers to what they want rather than telling them what they want. So I think that bodes well for your company. You do some stuff that I think is just fascinating in establishment and also pre-harvest. And I don't know how much of your trade secrets you want to give away to your competitors, but hopefully you're willing to share. So the first one I think that's pretty unique. I know you've got a lot of wind, and I don't know if you do it every time, but depending on the time of the year that you're planting a field, you'll put wheat in as a nurse plant. Explain that real quickly.
Yeah, so seed gets really expensive, and I've blown out probably more seed than I should have. Learning that, and we do it with everything, because we do it with onions, we do it with beans. We always throw a cover crop, because the wind blows, you're in a blow sand, and so you get a wind that shaves off a bean field, you're done. Well, the same thing happens in grass. I've had some of the coolest natural created bunkers ever in the middle of my sod field, and you're like, oh, that looks cool, but that's expensive. Now all of a sudden we just lost 2 acres of turf, and I've lost as much as 25, 30 acres, 50 acres in a year of new seeded stuff, just from wind damage. So what we try to do is we go out and we run a rotary harrow, Kuhn rotary harrow around, and we'll blow on wheat seed. And so we're all prepped up, ready to go. And then about 2 weeks after, we can, depending on time of year, but we fertilize that wheat, and we get it up to about 5 inches, 6 inches high, to where it's going to withstand a windstorm. And then we'll take and dimple seed our blues or our Rise into it, and we won't round up it until about 4 days after, 3-4 days after we've seed. We try to let that wheat stand back up, get another growth in it, and then we'll go in there and just round up the weed out, and then that'll hold our grass seed down from blowing out. Obviously we can't control the outsides of the fields, so some of that stuff, you're just you get a sand dune blowing in on the west end of the field, you just know you're going to lose a half acre, but we can hold the field down, hold it together, and it's been a good practice for us. It's everybody's like, I can't believe you can afford to throw weed on there, and I said, well, I spend $50 an acre, and I don't blow out something that I've got thousands bucks an acre into it. So
yeah,
so it's kind of a no-brainer for us.
The fact that you wait for it to come up, and then after seeding of the turf seed, then you spray Roundup, always kind of blew my mind. Like that takes some guts. Probably the first time that you tried it, it took a little bit of a gut check, I bet, to do that.
Well, we've done it for so long on onions and beans and corn and everything else out there, sunflower seed, pretty much everything we grow. And I mean, like with onions, we're out there scratching. I mean, we're taking knives out there and barely chipping away. And we literally will round up hours before that onion pops up. we do the same thing in potatoes. I mean, you're out there checking that seed every day, and you're like, that tuber's, and with a potato, you can actually round up it when the tuber first pops up before it opens that first leaf. But an onion, you've got to be, and you want to push it on those as long as you can, because you might get another set of flush of weeds killed. That helps you, down the road, so as long as you can go for that plant pops up and then spray it out, you might be killing a flush of mustard there that now all of a sudden you don't have to worry about, because you got it on your Roundup spray. So,
yeah.
So we always like to push it out there a little far. I'm not going to say I've never messed up and pushed it a little too far and killed the first little seedlings that come up. We always watch the wind real heavy, make sure the wind ain't going to blow. And if it looks like it's going to get windy, we'll spray it a little early, because you don't want to be late.
Yeah, exactly. And then you use tenacity every time you plant, or just some crops?
Depends on the field. So like the new field that you were out, last fall on, that we were developing, that one we didn't use any tenacity on it. So we just went out there and planted grass, planted cover crop. Then we planted the grass right into it and rounded it. But we knew there was no POA on it.
Yeah, you can get it down there.
Yeah. So on another field, we just pulled another field out, because along the pivot road, we just had so much POA contamination on that field. I mean, we were throwing the book at it. We were throwing pre-plant tenacity down. We were doing late fall, trying to get it weakened up going into winter. We would throw a ProGrass tenacity combo on,
right?
And then just about the time you thought it was dead, you did it again. And then about week 2 later, we'd do it again, and then it'd freeze hard. And we felt like we could kind of get some control with that. But any of our wetter, say we have 2 circles come together, we'll definitely that's going to be any 2 end guns coming together. Well, your moisture is going to be too high. You're going to have POA there. There's no way around it. So those areas like that, we'll pay a lot of attention to. If the field's been in sod for 3 years, first year, yeah, we won't see any POA. That second year, you're going to start seeing some, but by year 3, we are putting tenacity on everything if it's been in sod for 3 years.
And you do rotate between some of your row crop fields and your sod fields periodically, just to try to introduce different chemistry and maybe reduce some of that POA.
Yeah, exactly. We don't do it as much. We're going to start doing it more. I got one field that's just been a headache for me. Seems like every year, we end up throwing a lot of areas out in it. And so we just went, I was like, well, we're going to plant this back this spring. No, let's go plant corn in there, Roundup ready corn, spray Roundup on it, do that extra Roundup spray. And then next year, let's put beans in it, where we can put Select on there, which is a selective herbicide that only kills grasses. And let's knock this out, maybe go hay for 4 years, where we can, do grass selective herbicides on it. And you go hay for 4 years, the POA's gone,
Yeah, it's a big advantage over your competitors who are growing sod year over year over year, right?
Yeah, you got to have a lot of tools in your shed. You start doing that,
and a lot of acres.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And then Primo, that's something you and I talked about at length years ago, about pre-harvest Primo application. I know you do it sometimes, but what's the advantage?
Well, the biggest advantage for us is trying to get, what we notice is if we're trying to push bluegrass or the rhizomes of or the tillers of bluegrass before we get harvesting, this plot looks good, but it's not quite holding together, not knitted together enough, we'll go out there and try to get 2 apps on before we Primo. And what we've noticed is it just kind of, we do that, and then we start running it on the drier side. We really watch the moisture, drying it out, it gets a little bit, lessens up that elasticity of it. So, but the Primo really seems to take that. To me, it makes sense. You kind of stop that top growth, and you're sending that energy to the root system. And so we've used that as a tool mainly just to promote root strength, shear strength, to get something ready to go quicker. And we feel that, we have a lot of other things, that's just one of the tools, but we feel that's one of our most important tools, and we got a field trying to get it ready. And it just seems like that, you go check it and it won't hold together, and then you spray it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that worked good. You're able to just hardly tear it apart. So,
yeah. Well, that's it's an interesting. And again, you talked earlier about your input cost per acre, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you can deliver a higher quality product and it establishes quicker, it all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
to a certain extent, with sports turf and ready play stuff like that, you need to just give it its time. I mean, in my opinion, other people probably have a different opinion. In my opinion, you need to have it be full maturity. That's what's going to let it recover from events. You need to mass that organic mat, but you have to have organic matter in that to withstand, traffic and
exactly.
A soccer player, go sliding across it on his knees and that kind of stuff. And the one thing I've really tried to be strict about is saving those for all those what we call ready to play events, to be, making sure, hey, we're at least 14 months old, 14, 17 months old. And sometimes we're as old as 19 months, because we need, by the timing of planning and all this. So we just go out and we say, okay, nobody's touching this plot. This is now 14 months old, and this is only going out for those thick cut ready play conditions.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get to it. I wanted to talk about Copa America and the preparation for that, because that was kind of an interesting project where you did thick cut installed at CenturyLink Park or CenturyLink Stadium for Copa America. But what I did want to talk about, because it was such a unique experience for me, and hopefully we'll get back to this, but I got just a few more minutes left. You mentioned early on the field flip process, and I want you to kind of go into a little bit of detail in the next couple minutes on the flip that you do with the Tacoma Rainiers and how that works.
Yeah, so the Rainiers Stadium is Cheney Stadium, and it's shared by two professional soccer teams. So you got the Defiance, which is kind of the minor league team of the Sounders men's team, and then you have the Seattle Reign, which is the women's professional team, soccer team. And with stadiums being so expensive anymore, they have to utilize them more and more for more events to make them pay to bring money in and revenue in. So what we got asked to do a few years ago was like, hey, let's switch this thing back and forth and turn it into a soccer field. So we use a GKB Combinators. And we've custom built the center of the rotor on one to be just the width of their base pass. And then we have another one that is full length. And then we do all of our transitions with that. And we go in and take the warning track out with phrase mowers at a depth of about 1.5 inches. And then we take the infill clay out. The pitching mound is is a removable pitching mound. So it's a real pitching mound that goes into an insert that is a concrete insert where the trailer comes over and there's lift points on it, and you winch it out. And then we have grass that we've sodded in another one that they put back in there. Home plate, all the clay, black stick, all that stuff all comes out. Base pass come down and all get laid with a geofab. We use an 8-ounce geofab that we have a company in Moses Lake that manufactures it. And then they custom make the geofab so it fits right into the base passes, right into the infield. It's a 2-piece infield. So we just roll out these great big rolls of 8-ounce geofab, lay that in, and then we lay 1.5 inch thick cut ready play sod down. So we lay it down, and once we get done phrasing it out, lay the fabric down, we go in and lay the sod down, hydraulic seam it into place, and they are playing a soccer game on it. Sometimes those soccer games and baseball games will be, you'll have a baseball game, gets over at 7:30, 9 o'clock at night, and by morning we're laying sod. We work on it all night, get the sod in first thing in the morning, and the women's team will be out there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon warming up.
And you do that, and you're contracted with them to do that several times a season, right? And I was there for one of them, and I think the game was over. You had to wait for fireworks or something, and then it got started. And with all the automation, the the flip takes about 3-4 hours, right?
Yeah, I mean, if weather perfect, if we had to, it'd probably be a little bit. I mean, probably be a little bit more than that. I mean, we can get the clay out in about 3 to 4 hours,
Okay.
and the clay can get out. We run a GPS auto steer on the phrase mower that's taking the base pass out, so that's all programmed in. It goes perfectly straight line right down that width of the base pass. But that process is 3 to 4 hours, and then you got to get the geofab down. Then you got to get the grass down. Then you got to roll it. Now, we asphalt roll it after we hydraulic seam it all together. And then Michael's got to get out there and start putting his lines in. He runs a whole different pattern, on the mowing lines for soccer. Right. Everything goes across the field. Start painting the lines, and they start painting the other baseball lines. I mean, they're trying to wash them off, but then they use a little green pigment to go over it to kind of fade those white out of the grass there. And then, it's a day of no sleep. I mean, especially for Michael, we kind of split our crew up where we have our crew that takes clay out and gets everything prepped. And then we have another crew that comes in and lays it and seams it. So, Michael's crew, I mean, there's times you start getting a little rain, you got to tarp it and wait for the rainstorm to pass. And I mean, those guys will be sleeping in cots. So,
yeah. And you do it how many times a season?
Back and forth. I mean, typically over 20 times if you start, from transition it to baseball and then transition it back to soccer and then back to baseball. It's, probably 24 times a season. This year, we just got our call. I think we're going to we have it as a soccer field right now. And, the Defiance League's going to start playing, and they're going to start using it for baseball too. So we're actually going to do our first flip this year. This year with everything shut down, we haven't been doing much, but usually 24, 25, 26 times, back and forth.
Yeah, so. It's quite a process. I want to load. We might have to have you back to talk about some of these specialty things, because I've got some video of the custom mound coming out, and then the second insert with just a flat sod piece going back in. It's amazing, some of the technology out there, especially in the sports turf world. I mean, we get in one box in the golf course side or the sports turf side, and we don't realize what the other guys are doing, and it's pretty neat to watch some of the stuff that's done.
Well, and it's been fun to be a part of. It's kind of, that whole process was kind of an open slate, and it's like, okay, let's figure out the best way to do it. Let's figure out how to do better. So every time we did it, let's figure out how to be better. And so we've been able to be pretty innovative, and it's been fun to be a part of that with not only my crew, but Michael's crew. And I mean, the whole team on that, and everybody always kind of thinking outside of the box, and we've got it down to a pretty neat process. I mean, we're pretty proud to be a part of it,
Yeah, it's amazing. When I think I was with you the first time you did the full GPS on the base paths, and I remember you backing that 160 horse tractor up to home plate and hitting go, and you were hands off, and it just flawlessly removed all of that infield dirt off the base path and went right over first base, and away you go. It's it's the automation, it's all the specialty equipment you've got, the sod, the hydraulic sod knitter, all that stuff. I'm going to have you back because I'm out of time, but there's lots more to talk about, and I really appreciate your time this time, and we'll maybe do the next one with a little bit of video in the background to kind of show some of the specialty stuff, because I think that's definitely worth everyone's time. But I really want to thank you for your time, Nathan, and it's been I knew we were going to be in trouble on time because there's so much to talk about. And when I set this up with you, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to keep this to 45 minutes, but really appreciate it. I'm sure you got to get back to basketball, and thanks so much for being with us, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. You have a good day, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll talk to you, buddy. Thanks.
Bye.
Well, I was afraid that Nathan and I would get down too many rabbit trails and run out of time, and that's exactly what happened. I want to thank Nathan Cox from Desert Green for spending some time with us today, and we'll definitely have him back, and we'll We'll probably do the next interview with some video because he's just done so many unique projects in sports turf and golf with phrase mowing and baseball, soccer flips on the professional side, and his work with Copa America in putting natural grass over plastic turf. We will definitely have him back, but thanks so much for listening. If you want any of his interesting videos, you can go to his website, desertgreenturf.com, and Nathan's got a couple of YouTube videos loaded up there, and he promised me that he would load some more. So hope you enjoyed it. A little bit different, like I said, but I think there was lots of very interesting innovations and insights into kind of the back of the house of the turf industry on the growing of the sod side of things. So thanks again for listening, and look forward to seeing you again soon.